The big objective for this part of the book is once you have your referable client experience in place, then you're ready to bridge the gap to referrals. Hey there, and welcome to the Roadmap to Referrals podcast, a show that proves you can generate referrals without asking or manipulation. I'm your host, Stacey Brown Randall. I teach a science-backed methodology and framework that generates referrals without asking. This podcast and working with me is all about taking control of your referrals on your terms. Join me every week as we break it down. All right, so last week on the podcast, episode 386, I gave a breakdown of section 2 of my new book, The Referable Client Experience. So we are talking all about the book right now. We're kind of in this little mini series talking about the book. So the episode before that, episode 385, I gave a breakdown of section 1. So there are 3 sections in the book, and we are going to tackle the final section with this episode. We're going to tackle part 3. So if you haven't gone back and listened to 385 and 386, where I break down, part 1 and part 2 of the book, I'm going to recommend you do that. I mean, you don't have to, but you can definitely do that. It'll make sense as to how I'm diving into, of course, part 3. But first, if you haven't purchased your copy of the book, The Referable Client Experience, please do. I'm recording this weeks before you guys will actually hear it in your earbuds. At the time that this was released, it actually got noted by Amazon as a notable arrival. So I didn't know what that meant. I had to look it up. Thank goodness Amazon gives you explanations right there. But basically it just said that Amazon has selected it as something that has been shown to be successful. I'm totally paraphrasing what they said, but that's what I read. That's what I heard. Something that people were going to like and it's going to be successful based on past maybe buying habits of people or what people are showing. And then, I don't know, maybe it's because I have a first book that sells too, and maybe that factors into, I don't know how I got a notable arrival with the new book. I'm just thrilled that I did. Okay, so if you haven't bought your copy, you can go to Referable Client Experience. It lists out all the links of where you can buy it. So if you're in Australia or if you are in Europe or if you're in Canada or the United States, it'll have links to where you can go buy the book in your country or in your area. So please take advantage of that. All right. Let's tackle part 3. Now, for context, part 1 is about the feelings driving the client experience. And again, that was episode 385. In part 2, we now are connecting the stages of the client experience. So we're taking what we learned from part 1 and we're actually putting it into practice within the 3 stages of the client experience. And of course, that was episode 386. We will link to these in the show notes so you can have all 3 episodes nice and tidy right there for you on the show notes page. The show notes page for this episode is staceybrownrandall.com/387. If you go to that show notes page, you can get the links to all the other episodes if that works best for you. Part 3 of the book is now what I know most people are like, okay, let's get to the good stuff, right? Where we're going to bridge the gap to referrals. And so I just want to take a minute before I dive into breaking down the chapters that are in this section. And I just want to make sure that people understand why the book is the way it is, right? This isn't about holding what some people will consider the best part for the very end. It may feel that way to you when you read it, but that is not the intention of how the book is written. The book is written because I want you to know that before you can freaking bridge the gap to get referrals, you actually have to be referable, right? If you read the book, this is like a dead horse for you because I say it a lot in the book because sometimes I know people have to hear things 7 to 12 times before it sinks in, right? So we are bridging the gap to referrals in this part, but it doesn't matter. I say this in the book, and I'm going to say this again. It doesn't matter what language tactic I give you or what referral seed opportunity I give you or which tactic I give you based on something you can do that would help you bridge the gap to referrals, to receive referrals. None of that matters. None of that's going to work if you're not actually referable. Right. So that's why the book is written in the order that it's written. And that is why I spend the first 2 sections on helping you understand what it means to be referable and then showing you how to close the gap or how to bridge that gap to referrals. The big objective for this part of the book is once you have your referable client experience in place, then you're ready to bridge the gap to referrals. All right. The chapters in section 3 break down the science of referrals, but not all of the science of referrals. It's looking looking at the science from the tactics that are typically taught, what I would call in the marketing space or through a marketing lens. So this isn't a science book. You're not going to get chapters and chapters of the science behind referrals. We're probably gonna have to save that for a future book, right? But you do have to understand it. So the section 3 opens up with you understanding a little bit about the science. Again, it's not all the science pieces that I teach from. It's not all the science pieces that you may have heard me talk about on this podcast, right? I don't dig into like the psychology of trust necessarily in this section, because what I'm helping you understand from what helps you put in place what I'm going to teach you in the following 2 chapters is really understanding the science of referrals, but from a marketing lens. What is taught of how you get referrals from your clients that is typically taught with a marketing perspective. And that is what I want to debunk for you. And that is what we dig into in the first chapter of section 3 of the book. So keep that in mind. You may be like, well, she talks about other things about science of referrals. And yes, it's all still true. It just didn't all make the cut in the book, right? Because as you know, if you've read my first book, you know, but I now strive to write books that when people pick it up and they hold it in their hands, it doesn't feel like a 400-page tome that they'll never get through. It's like, wait, I think I can get through this one. It's just small enough, but hopefully you'll believe that it's also packed with enough goodness to get you going as well. It's not everything I teach inside the Referable Client Experience. Of course not. It's in a, I don't know, 160-page book. Obviously, it's not everything I teach. And obviously, you don't have access to me inside this book to tell you how I would do things specifically for your business. Clearly, that's what I do for my clients. But you will definitely get started with what you need with what's in the book. I also explain in the second chapter in this section, I also explain the 3 opportunities for referrals inside your client experience, which are the right people, referral hot zones, and the right referral moments. And then, of course, we also tackle in the final chapter some basic referral seed language that you should put into place and ways that you should think about this and the ways that you should think about the language piece. But I really want you to spend time in that middle chapter that is in section 3. I believe it's chapter 8, where you are going to really like dig into like, oh, there are things I need to be looking for about where referrals are more likely to happen, either from the right people, the right moments in terms of like hot zones, and also because your clients will say things and you need to know how to respond from a referral perspective. And then we tackle the language pieces around that in the final chapter of the book. I do want to call your attention to one really important exercise in chapter 8, and that is identifying your hot zones. I teach inside the book 3 options on how to do it. Now, you may think, what really, Stacey, you have to take pages up from the book where you're explaining 3 ways to do one thing. And the answer to that is yes, because I've done this with my clients and I know everybody's a little bit different. But when I teach you how to identify your hot zones and you're going to read each of these 3 ways to do it, you are going to have a visceral reaction to probably 1 or 2 of them. And you're going to be like, no, I don't have the time. I don't have the energy. I won't do it. I'll procrastinate. So it's written in a way for the people who want to go deep and get this right and get this like truly locked in. There's a master step that's going to walk you through it in the book. For other folks who are like, well, first of all, I'm new in business, or second of all, this is a super busy season for me. That's fine too. There is a section in that chapter where I talk about using this as a starter step. Like, hey, you don't have to do everything in the master step. Here's how you can get started, right? And then, of course, there's for the folks who are like, I'm not doing either of those. And then there's a step for you too, called the as we go step. But it is super important you pick one of the 3 and you complete it. Now, if you have the companion workbook that goes along with the book, then that'll make it easier for you. There's room to do all 3 of them in the workbook, but you're only going to pick one. You only need one, unless you pick as you go or starter step. You may come back later and do the master step when you see what the data starts to reveal. But this exercise is really important that you do it with your business data in mind. In fact, you cannot wing this. You cannot use what your memory thinks it remembers or your recency bias to decide and how to go through these steps to identify where your referral hot zones are. And I actually I'm not going to give it away right now. You have to go read the book for it, but I actually give a surprising statistic that I learned inside my business of where I thought referrals were hiding. And then when I did this, right, because everything I teach, I do or have done right in the past, and then I keep it going. when I did this in my business, I was wrong. Well, you know what? I'm not going to tell you. You got to go read the book. Anyways, you'll see that I was wrong about something, and I talk about that in the book. So that is our breakdown of section 3. I'm going to talk about the science of referrals so you can understand it from what is typically taught when it comes to getting referrals from clients. And that's why we spend time in that marketing promotional lens, because that is typically what is tackled. Obviously, we tackle the asking piece too, because lots of people teach you to ask your clients for referrals too. And I say, don't do that. They don't want to be asked. And then, of course, we're going to talk about understanding where referrals are hanging out from a client experience, understanding your hot zones, your right people, and the right referral moments. And then, of course, the language piece with our final chapter. Please, 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 please don't be the person who goes and grabs the book, flips to this third section and just reads those 3 chapters, picks up a few pieces and goes and put it in place. You can be. I'm not saying that won't help you, but you certainly won't get out of it everything you're supposed to if you don't actually read the whole book and put the things into place. Now, I also just want to remind you, please don't skip the introduction and the conclusion. In some ways, I almost felt like those 2, introduction and conclusion, what I say in the introduction and conclusion, I felt like needed to be in a chapter. It's that important. But just how the book laid out, they ended up just being the intro and the conclusion. So please don't skip that. It's actually really important that you read those 2 because there's actually more goodness in there as well. So again, that's our breakdown of section 3. Listen to the 2 previous episodes to get the breakdown of section 1 and section 2. If you haven't bought your copy yet, please take a moment to buy your copy. And then once you buy your copy, if you love the book, please take a moment to whatever platform of where you bought the book, whether that's Amazon or Books A Million or Barnes and Nobles or Bookshop or Chapters or Indigo, wherever you bought the book, will you please take a minute and go and leave a review? Of course, 5 stars are preferred. Thank you so much. All right. So the Referable Client Experience, of course, you can find it. The book website is referrableclientexperience.com. And again, you can access the links to the previous episodes for the book website, everything you need, plus the transcripts of this episode on the show notes page at stacybrownrandall.com/387. Thanks for making it to the end. Until next week, take control of your referrals and build a referable business. Bye for now.